A viewer has asked if I could provide a list of things a person would absolutely need for a long hike on the Appalachian Trail. The answer is yes, of course. We'll do it by running down a list of things that a long-distance AT hiker absolutely needs to take care of. Then we'll look at different ways hikers might meet those needs. We'll talk about the most basic or minimalist choices I have seen used. Then we'll discuss more elaborate choices. If some of the choices seem shocking, we need to remember I have seen hikers who concentrated on mobility above all else. Most of them already had 700 or 800 miles under their belts, so they had plenty of experience to help them decide how they were going to equip themselves. And if we disagree with their choices, we can choose something else. One of the first needs we might think of is a way to carry all of our stuff, which means a pack. We might want to think about making the pack one of our last purchases. Many packs I have seen, particularly the lighter ones, come with a maximum load recommendation listed in pounds. For example, 30 pounds. If we don't already have all of our other backpacking stuff, we might not be sure we can get down to 30 pounds with food and water included. This 4-pound, 3.5-ounce load is what I have used, and on the AT, food, water, clothes, etc. brought the total up to an average of 25 pounds, so all the other stuff can add up. Some ultralight packs are just a big bag with no frame, and that's my first choice. As I've said, I stick a rolled-up sleeping pad in mine. Everything else goes inside the pad, and the pad gives the pack its shape. So the pack feels comfy on my back, and I have no complaints. Many heavier packs have a lot of pockets and compartments for our convenience. Packs with frames, of course, promise us comfort. Some of the smaller, lighter ones have a limited capacity, such as 40 liters. But 40 liters is not a lot of room. That size also would force us to choose relatively lighter items, because those items tend to be smaller than heavier stuff. If we aren't concerned about weight, of course, the sky is the limit. A good pack weighing 6 pounds should have all of the features needed to carry a heavy load. Sleeping in a shelter out of the rain is another need we'll have on the AT. To meet this need, I have met a couple of hikers who carried nothing. That's because they counted on sleeping in the wooden shelters and lean-tos along the AT. Now, this was more than 10 years ago. I'm not sure that's such a good idea these days because the AT seems to be a busier place than it was then. A couple of hikers I met carried a poncho as a backup shelter. That sounded dubious when I first heard it, but one of them explained he pitched his the way we see this one, and he said he used it without fear. He said he paid attention to wind direction if it looked like rain, but he never had any problems and didn't worry about it. Because a tarp tent can be almost as light as a top-of-the-line backpacking tarp, that's my first choice, as I've said before. And as I've said, I originally used them for cold and snowy conditions during hunting trips. Getting a tight pitch with a tarp or tarp tent is easy if we do it correctly. See the link for a video I did that talks about this. I've already discussed considerations of using a commercial tent, such as their weight and cost. For details on that, see the video I just mentioned. Another thing we need is decent sleep. The most basic sleeping gear I've seen on the AT would be a fleece blanket sewed into a sleeping bag or a cheap synthetic sleeping bag. Those are basically warm weather choices. When it comes to cold weather, our options are a heavy sleeping bag or a lighter down or dry down bag. Synthetic is fairly inexpensive. Down and dry down will cost more. I have met through hikers using a 20-degree down bag for their entire hike. The most basic sleeping pad would be a relatively inexpensive closed-cell foam pad. This green one is a cheap Coleman model that I've used a lot since I bought it, among others. Besides their modest cost, a closed-cell pad also has the advantage that it will never deflate. I also like ridge rest pads, which are very popular. Some folks need an inflatable pad to sleep comfortably. The lighter pads tend to cost more. The climate sleeping pads seem to be the latest innovation at the moment. See the description for a link to those pads. Most manufacturers will sell an inflatable pad repair kit, and my advice is to carry that kit on the AT. Another thing that can help you sleep is earplugs. I would not backpack on the AT without a pair. I have been surrounded by insects that made enough noise to keep me awake. Another need is to keep dirt off of us as much as possible. If using a tarp or floorless tarp tent, I use a ground sheet under the sleeping pad to minimize contact with dirt. I bought a piece of black plastic at a farm supply store and have used that same sheet for years. Because black absorbs heat, I have seen mine stay dry in wet conditions when a friend using a clear plastic sheet had his collect water underneath it. I also suggest carrying at least a small piece of plastic tarp to sit on when we take a rest break. Before I started using one, my pants got filthy on the AT. Those who are interested can also buy small closed cell pads designed for sitting. We all need water on the AT, and the most basic gear I have seen for this is 1 or 2 water bottles with no purification or filter used. Those who do this operate under a couple of assumptions. One is that they will move fast enough to reach the next water source in a timely manner. Also, they can drink a lot at the water source, reducing what they have to carry. And they also believe water from underground springs and streams is safe. As I've explained before, I have hiked on the AT in a drought, and I'm totally paranoid about running out of water. I'd rather be shot at sunrise than start out in the morning with less than 3 liters. In the description, I have put a link to a study citing no difference in the rate of illness between those who treat water and those who don't, and that includes the use of water filters. Even so, I would not backpack on the AT without carrying aqua mineral water treatment. I would agree that water from an underground spring is about as clean as it can get, but I'm not ready to trust every stream. Plenty of people use water filters, of course. The modern cellular filters are an economical choice these days. When it comes to sickness in the outdoors, I think the most common threat is failure to keep our hands clean. I've only gotten sick once while camping, and I think that's what caused it. I have stayed healthy on the AT by washing my hands in a stream and wiping them off with a bandana. I always carry a small bottle of liquid soap, but I haven't used it on the AT. Another option is hand sanitizer, and I always carry some of that. It is a good plan for an AT hiker to carry ibuprofen and Imodium. If your legs ache, you'll be glad you had ibuprofen. If you get diarrhea, heaven forbid, you'll be glad you had Imodium. I'd also carry some Band-Aids. If you carry hand sanitizer, its alcohol can work as an antiseptic if you don't mind yelling ouch. It's also a good idea to read up on first aid or take a course. Don't forget toilet paper, a toothbrush, toothpaste, and floss. It's mostly shady on the AT, but I carry sunscreen and I use it. If you don't carry and use deodorant, you can expect to start smelling bad. Injury on the AT is likely to occur in one of 2 ways. The strain of hiking and climbing can hurt our feet, knees, and legs. We also can get hurt if we trip, stumble, or fall. To protect themselves from these kinds of things, the minimum I have seen other hikers use is trust and good luck in their own quick reflexes. A step up from that would be fashioning our own walking staff. My first choice is to use a pair of trekking poles. Again, see the description to learn more about this. When it comes to preparing and cooking food, the minimum I have seen used on the AT is nothing. Those hikers don't cook. They eat things like pepperoni, flour tortillas, cheese, dried fruit, and a variety of snack items. If I can't eat something hot, I hardly feel like I ate at all. It's also something of a morale booster. This pot, the lid, the scraper, etc. are my minimum. I can easily get by without the cup. This pot holds over 800 milliliters, and I wouldn't use anything smaller, but I have seen other hikers cooking in smaller metal cups. We also risk illness if we constantly eat from a pot or container we don't keep clean. In another video, I told how I use this white nylon scraper to eat food from my pot when I can't get all of the food out with a spoon. The scraper removes virtually everything from the pot. Then I swish the inside with some hot water and a toothbrush, and it's spotless. This requires a pot I can get my hand into. It also helps if the pot wall is completely smooth on the inside. If a titanium spork or spoon seems like overkill, I once jammed a Lexan spoon into my pot and it snapped in 2. I was shocked, and I would have been more shocked if I hadn't had a titanium spork with me. I have used alcohol stoves and an Esbit stove for AT cooking. Probably the most simple and easy option is a canister stove. These stoves are fairly light and not expensive. Fuel canisters can be found pretty handily along the AT. If all you do with it is light your stove, a Bic lighter will last you for months. Yet another link in the description tells how to avoid the need for highly efficient superhot stoves on the AT. Another thing you'll need is a way to hang food in a tree to keep it from animals. I have used a garbage bag and a piece of cord I bought at a hardware store for this. Some commercially made bags are designed to carry food while hiking. I've always carried at least a small pepper spray because bears are out there. It's also a self-defense option if a hiker is concerned about that. Stuff sacks are handy, and I have made a number of them using sil nylon. But Ziploc freezer bags and garbage bags can also be used to organize our stuff, and they are waterproof. We are supposed to carry all of our own trash out with us until we find a trash can. I always carry a handful of plastic shopping bags for this. I would urge anyone hiking on the AT to carry some kind of trail guide. I have mentioned the AT Conservancy's maps and trail guides before, but the most basic choice is one of these. Each covers the entire trail, plus stores and towns near the trail. I would never hike anywhere without a compass. As I have said, a compass has been the only thing that's kept me from hiking in the wrong direction on the AT. If we plan to cover a lot of miles, we have to get up early in the morning, and that's something I have trouble doing without a portable alarm clock. Staying reasonably dry is another need on the AT. I have found it impossible to stay 100% dry 100% of the time, but we don't want to get soaking wet. The most basic rain gear I have seen used is a sil nylon poncho, and that's what I use. I also carry a small cheap umbrella to use in camp. Because I use a poncho, I don't need a pack cover. I also don't sweat too badly with it. I have used a rain suit in hot weather, and I did sweat badly inside that. In cold weather, though, I would carry a rain suit, and it would be a set of frog togs. They are inexpensive, and I would consider them a semi-disposable item. I'd also carry duct tape to shut any tears that might appear, and I would still carry the poncho. When it comes to more sophisticated rainwear, the sky is the limit and so is the cost. I once saw an outdoor rain jacket that cost more than $300. I was surprised when I would talk to hikers who said they didn't carry any spare clothing, but I always do. I also sleep in a long-sleeve fleece pullover. Even in summer, nights can get cool on the AT if we aren't at sea level. Another good plan is to carry a pair of thick socks and use them only for sleeping. I'll do another video later that goes into more detail about hiking clothes, and in particular, clothes for hiking in cold weather. If there's one thing we don't need on the AT, it's blisters on our feet. I always carry a roll of white medical tape, and I always have tape on the areas of my feet that might blister. Blisters on the AT can be very bad news. Yet again, see the description for more on how I avoid them. I also plan another video on small tricks and doodads that can be helpful on the AT. The two items we should mention here are a pocket knife and a headlamp. To open packaging without making a mess, I need a small knife, and a little Swiss Army knife like this one is a good minimum. If we plan to night hike, we need a reliable bright headlamp, and it would be a good idea to carry some spare batteries. If we plan to spend every night in a shelter, it would be a good idea to get a headlamp that also has a red bulb so we don't blind anyone else there. I always use a Petzl headlamp, and there are some brands that claim to be better and cost more. If we plan to thru-hike the AT, it's a great help to have someone at home who might mail us some item we might need. For example, they might send us a warm weather sleeping bag that we bought in advance. We also might want to mail home some items we decide we don't need. See the description for the Light Blaze website, where we can find more information about mail drops along the AT. If we plan to thru-hike, we also are going to need money. I read one estimate online that we should figure on spending $1,000 for each month we hike. I see merit in that idea in the sense that the faster we move, the less it should cost. If we want to keep costs down, we should be prepared to exercise an iron discipline. Motels are expensive. Based on what I hear, the farther north we travel, the more expensive they get. The same has been said for buying food. If we stay at a hostel, the cheapest approach is to sleep in our tent in the yard if the hostel allows it. If we frequently eat in restaurants, our food costs will skyrocket. Spending a lot of time in towns is an invitation to spend. Thru-hikers often save money when they stay in a motel by sharing a room, thus sharing the cost. Heather Anderson set a speed record for a backpacking AT thru hiker in 2015. One of the news stories about her said she spent $2,000 on her hike, but she mail dropped all of her food in advance and spent basically no time in towns. And with that, we're once again done. I'd like to thank all of my subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, it would be much appreciated if you do. And as always, thank you very much for watching.